Andrew Stein was not an ordinary man, at least not by our standards. People like him were, to a degree, commonplace where he lived. Not everyone could sling fire out of their hands. Andrew was a respected member of the mystical police department, where cops with magic abilities were assigned. He had a spotless track record if you chose to ignore his throw-the-book-out-the-window mentality. He never did anything as he'd been told, but the chief of the department couldn't fire him because he always came out with the criminal in cuffs, and people putting in a good word about him. He was the best on the force. "You got some nerve showing up down here again," a gruff voice growled, echoing through the subway station. "Nice to see you too, Fanglock," Andrew responded to the troll who now stood next to him. Howard Fanglock wasn't a bad individual. He knew the rules and followed them well. His only major problem was that he was an asshole. Being a troll, Fanglock spent most of the day in the old tunnels under the city, where his kind had dug out a village away from the sun. Sure, the periodic roar of the subway would disturb them, but that was true for everyone in this armpit of a city, so they couldn't complain more than anyone else. He and Andrew used to work together in the below street patrols until the troll quit. "I thought I told you we can handle ourselves down here," Howard said through his pointed teeth. "Troll problems are troll problems. And I respect that," Andrew started. "But this isn't a troll problem. One of our problems thinks he can hide down here." Howard raised a hairless brow. "You remember Ogre Bullwick?" Howard bent down to Andrew's height. "You mean that ogre mob boss?" he whispered. "He's here. Couple of our boys chased his war-painted ass down here. Not seen him since, so we suspect he's hiding out of our reach." The troll stood up straight, his head almost hitting the girders supporting the ceiling. He only stood tall when something pissed him off. "You want to bring someone down here to find him?" Andrew turned to face his ex-partner. "My group's going to be joining me in a few minutes. Do you think the trolls can tolerate that for one day? If it means flushing him out, go for it. They'll understand." He turned his back to Andrew as a train rushed past. "But I'll have no part of it. I already lost too much to that monster." As Fanglock left, Andrew took a stroll of his own down memory lane. The reason his partner left the MPD was because his fiancée had been killed by Ogre in cold blood. One would never expect a troll of all beings to care so much, but Fanglock cared with so much of his heart. Andrew used to joke that his love must come from somewhere else too. If that troll could have spontaneously switched places with his fiancée at that exact time, he would have. Back when they were partners, Howard showed great promise with a rare magical ability, binary teleportation, a form of magic that allowed him to teleport himself or another. The only catches were that he or his target had to switch places with someone else, and he could only use it 3 times a day. He ran out of uses that day. Andrew absent-mindedly snapped his fingers to a rhythm only he can hear, sparks flying from his hands every time they clicked. "Yo! Stop wasting you magic, Stein!" Norman Finlick shouted behind him. Finlick was an old stickler for the rules. He did everything by the book, and insisted everyone around him did the same, or they'd be written up. Ultimately empty threats. The chief always dismissed his countless notifications about breaks in protocol. No one respected the man. Andrew paid him no mind and glanced at the rookie walking behind him. Francis Damien had come into his magical ability recently and got assigned to MPD by his old department when he showed promise. He didn't have the best posture, a man made for a desk job more than running around chasing ogres. He didn't even like to use his magic. So why was he there? To watch a trio of pros at work and learn. Speaking of trio, the third cop strode past Norman. Jessica Outland had been paired up with Andrew in the past, and she respected his unorthodox methods, but she didn't support them. She'd rather do things the way they're designed than be a wild card like Andrew. "So," Andrew started, "the gang's all here?" Norman shot him a glare. "Don't change the subject. I saw you frivolously using your magic just now." Andrew sighed. "For the love of God, it's not like we run out. Also, since when was that in the book you've been gluing your nose to?" Norman huffed. "I'll have you know, I sent a letter to the chief about having that and many other rules instated, he said proudly. Jessica approached. Yeah, like that'll ever happen. You should know by now he's never going to listen to you. Norman scowled at her. He didn't say another word as he stepped around to stand by the rails. Andrew turned to face Francis. How have you been holding up, rookie? Francis hobbled over with his head down. I had to listen to him listing all of his nonsense rules the entire way here. If he says one more page number or a paragraph line, I'm going to show him the next ice age, he almost shouted through his teeth. Do it anyway, Andrew jokingly said. You'd be doing us all a favor. They marched down the tunnel with Norman in the lead, holding up an electric lantern. They made sure to stay on the steel catwalk that had been built alongside the rails. The lack of a railing made it a little too easy to forget where the catwalk ended if you weren't looking down. The train roared past. How the trolls that lived down here stood, the noise was beyond Andrew. They must have some damn good soundproofing in their homes, unless most of them were deaf. A flash of blue shot over their heads. Everyone ducked as another nearly hit them. Thought ye could get to jump on me, cops! The booming voice of an ogre dominated the space. Ogrim stood just around a corner, clutching something wreathed in blue fire in his hand. You're under arrest, Norman yelled. Andrew shook his head and ran past Norman. By now, even you should know not to say that until after we detain him. He formed a fireball in his hand and pitched it toward Ogrim. Andrew, Francis, and Jessica quickly outpaced Norman, leaving him behind around a curve in the tunnel. They chased Ogrim into a maintenance tunnel that ran perpendicular to the tracks. They flattened themselves against the subway wall, and Andrew peered around the corner. Ogrim waved the item in his hand and tossed another blue fireball from it. Was he holding a magical tool? Such tools could be used to cast magic if someone didn't have any magical ability of their own. But like a gun, you'd need a license to even own one, let alone use it. Andrew tossed two more flames at Ogrim, only to have them countered by a blue flame that bounced between them. Jessica quickly stepped out and added a fireball of her own, but the ogre deflected that one too. Me got a good aim, eh, cop? Ogrim boasted. You can entertain your cellmates with those parlor tricks later, Andrew joked, readying another spell. A spike of blue light shot past him and hit the floor at Ogrim's feet, encasing one of his boots in an ice crystal. Andrew turned around to see Francis standing behind him with his hand outstretched, a spiral of pale blue magic swirling around it, with ice crystals orbiting through the vaporous light. In a rage, Ogrim struggled to get his foot out of the ice. He yanked on his leg and tried to smash the ice or melt it with the blue flames from his magic tool. Don't bother, Francis spoke sternly. That's blue ice. A hydraulic press can't break that. With one big yank, Ogrim managed to pull his foot out from his boot. Bah, me needed new boots anyway. He swung his tool and launched a large blue flame at the group. Francis acted quickly to make a wall of ice between them and the fireball. Quick thinking, rookie, Andrew said. He and Jessica worked together to aim their magical fire at one spot until a hole opened in the wall. Andrew tossed a fireball through it and was able to knock the tool out of Ogrim's hand. The ogre shouted profanities in his native tongue before raising his hand and throwing a blue flame straight out of it. Thought me needed that old thing, eh? The hole in the wall expanded as ice crumbled away. Andrew grabbed Francis and ducked around a corner with Jessica on their heels. Shock ran through his head faster than he could think. Never in his life had he seen an ogre with magical ability. Norman caught up at last. What's going on? It's Ogrim. He's a wizard. Norman rolled his eyes. Just because he has a scepter doesn't mean he's casting fireballs without the scepter. He knocked it out of his hand. Two more blue flames shot past as Ogrim cackled. Francis used his own magic to rebuild his ice wall and extend it across the maintenance tunnel opening. I can't keep this up for too much longer. We need a plan. Great, thanks to you. We're stuck hiding from a fugitive ogre who can use magic, Norman berated Andrew. Great going. You're getting fired for sure now. A light bulb went off of Andrew's head. No, Ogrim's the one who's trapped. He has nowhere he can run, Why else would he still be there? The tunnel must be sealed at the other end. With a smirk, he built up a fireball in each hand. I'm going in once the wall goes down. Francis nodded to him, understanding Andrew's scheme. He backed off from the barrier and stopped fortifying it. The next blast from Ogre shattered the wall. In a flash, Andrew put his two flames together and launched them at the ogre in full force. The shot connected and sent the ogre flying backward into a metal wall. His head clanged against an iron pipe, and he dropped motionless to the floor. When the dust settled, Andrew looked around. No doors, no other tunnels, just a maintenance hatch that was way too small for an ogre to fit through. He smirked, knowing his suspicion was right. "All right, Norman. Now you can read him his rights." With a scowl, Norman slung a pair of cuffs on Ogrim's wrists. "Let's just get this over with so I can have you written up." Walking back to the tunnel entrance, Andrew gave Francis a pat on the back. "You came in clutch back there with that ice magic of yours. You could say you're the coolest one of us today." Francis didn't laugh, but he did give a meek smile. "The coolest one of us? Really?" It sounded better in my head. They had almost reached the subway station with stairs leading to the street where they had parked their vehicles. Then, it was just a straight shot, and they could finally get this monster off the streets. Norman shouted, and everyone spun around to see that Ogre had woken up and rammed him into the side wall. The ogre conjured his blue fire and melted the cuffs off his wrists. "You think me gonna go easy?" Jessica raised her hands to sling her magic. She cast a cloud of embers that shot through the air like shotgun pellets and stung Ogre in the eyes. The ogre's pained howls filled the tunnel as Francis frantically tried to freeze his feet again. Ogre turned and tried to stagger away, making it hard to land a shot. Andrew lunged forward to tackle the retreating ogre, only to get knocked sideways onto the rails by one large flailing arm. The roar of an approaching train echoed loudly. Andrew looked to his side to see the rapidly approaching headlight. Then, with a burst of purple, he flashed back to the catwalk. A loud thud boomed as the train rushed past. Jessica and Francis ran over to Andrew. "What the hell just happened?" they both exclaimed. Andrew recognized the purple sparks of teleportation magic still floating around him. He got to his feet and brushed himself off. "So you came back after all, Howard." The troll came out from behind a thick support beam. "That implies I actually left." He waved his hand, purple lights drifting off his fingers like dust. He smirked as he looked at the bloody mess on the rails left behind when Ogre got hit. "I decided to sit back and wait for the next train." Everyone looked at him in shock. The ex-cop had been planning this? Jessica turned to Andrew. "So, now what? Do we arrest him?" Andrew looked at Norman, who was still out cold but starting to stir. "He didn't see anything. We can say Ogre was killed in an accident trying to run away." Howard gave a subtle smile and turned to leave. "Yo, Howard! How long have you been waiting for that chance?" Without turning around, the troll lifted his fiancée's gold ring that hung on a chain around his neck and gave it a gentle kiss. "Too long.